Now today, the UK and the USA have agreed a brand new trade deal, one of which Brexit has been given all of the credit, and that must have stuck in the craw of Sir Keir Starmer. Well, earlier today, the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, and the President announced the deal. Let's take a listen.
There won't be any red tape. Things are going to move very quickly both ways. The final details are being written up in the coming weeks. We'll have it all very conclusive, but the actual deal is a very conclusive one.
Really important deal. This is going to boost trade between and across our countries. It's going to not only protect jobs but create jobs, opening market access.
Well, it started, Kelsey, it looked like a Zoom call during lockdown, and the deal will see the tariffs on the UK car industry slashed from 25% to 10%, which will be a huge boost to British companies, or will it, such as Range Rover and Aston Martin. And the Prime Minister said this.
And for the great British cars that you make here, that we see all around us, this deal means that the US tariffs will now be cut from 27.5% down to 10% for 100,000 vehicles every year. That's a huge and important reduction. And I know from when I was last here how much that will have been weighing on your minds when you knew the size of the tariff that would otherwise be in place.
Well, the Prime Minister looked excited. The Jaguar Land Rover employees, they look like they're at a funeral. However, this deal could be more bad news for British farmers, as it's understood that the tariffs on American beef will be cut to zero as part of a 12-month temporary arrangement. Now, that could mean the UK could be flooded with cheap American beef, undercutting British farmers at a time where they're already severely under the cosh. Let's get some reaction now from the director of UK-US Special Relationship Unit Prosperity Institute, Sarah Elliott. Sarah, and for full disclosure, the Prosperity Institute is owned by the Legatum Group. The group is also one of the lead investors in the holding company of GB News. Sarah Elliott, I've got to say, this was trumpeted by Donald Trump as a great deal for both countries. The UK is our greatest ally, and yet the bonus for America is abundantly clear. $11 billion worth was set out in that conference there, $5 billion worth of new market access, $6 billion of tariff revenue for the American exchequer. Well, what's in it for Britain?
Well, the consumer benefits from this because you'll get more products at lower prices. The car industry continues to sell well in the United States. And in fact, the British car industry focuses mostly on luxury cars, Rolls-Royce, Aston Martin, Bentleys. People like to pay more for those luxury items. It raises the status of owning them. But it's a great first step. I don't see this as a real comprehensive deal, but I do see that major milestones were made, particularly in agriculture. I mean, you have to remember there were 50% beef tariffs that the UK placed on U.S. beef producers, pretty high. And the UK has 40 active free trade agreements around the world, and it should have one with the United States. So I hope this is just a movement in the right direction where we can continue to lower tariffs and non-tariff barriers.
Have you ever seen a headline so biased you couldn't help but laugh? Well, here's how you can cut through the spin and get a clearer picture of what's actually happening out there. We've all seen those news stories. Everything's a catastrophe. Facts are feelings, and even the weather becomes political. If you're tired of wading through sensational headlines and narratives leaning so far left they're practically falling over, consider our partner Ground News. Ground News isn't just another news source, it's a tool that lets you easily spot the spin. Take, for example, the Trump tariffs pause. This story had over 600 articles, 29% on the left, 54% centre, and 17% on the right. Left-leaning coverage, like Bloomberg UK, framed the EU's tariff actions as a measured retaliation to Trump's policies, emphasising the need for predictable trade conditions and using terms like onslaught to describe Trump's approach. Right-leaning outlets, such as the Daily Express, conversely characterised the EU as bottling under pressure and engaging in revenge that the EU merely matched, and highlighting China's high tariffs on US goods. With ground news, you can quickly spot when a story is disproportionately covered from one side. They're handy bias ratings, which show purported news bias, and blind spot feed, a feed that you can see stories disproportionately covered by one side, make it easy to see what's being exaggerated, underreported, or simply misunderstood. What really convinced us to partner with Ground News is their commitment to transparency and clear information. In a time when algorithms feed us content designed only to hold our attention, not necessarily inform us, Ground News is genuinely refreshing. It's not about being unbiased, it's about clarity and balance. If you want to cut through sensationalism, visit ground.news/GBN or scan this QR code now to subscribe. You'll receive 40% off the Vantage plan, giving you unlimited ad-free access to news coverage worldwide.
Sarah Elliott, I hear what you're saying, but I've been speaking to British farmers who have been in the studio oftentimes since the beginning of what they see as a war on them by Sir Keir Starmer, and they don't share your enthusiasm. They've been saying to me today that opening up the British market to US beef could decimate our own industry. America produces so much more beef than the United Kingdom. On ethanol, a previous tariff of 19% down to 0%, and the US wheat industry subsidised by the state. This doesn't create a level playing field. It creates a system British farmers are feeling where it's going to further impact their bottom line. It's a good deal for America. Why is it a good deal for Britain?
Again, choice and competition is always good for the consumer and raising standards of living and lowering prices. But what has to be remembered is that the British have been buying most of their beef and things from the EU. They have a free trade agreement with the EU. And so now I think it's more changing its market base from maybe purchasing from the European Union and more from the United States. So it may not change the quantity or the amount on the shelves, just maybe where it's being purchased. The UK is a food net importer. It can only feed itself. It can only produce 62% of the food it consumes. So it does need to import arable crops, fruits, and vegetables of different kind. And why not do it from your best ally, the United States? It's a huge economy, and Americans love
Sarah, that
British
is not
goods.
what British farmers tell me all the time. Hundreds and hundreds of British farmers, thousands of them were out there, loads of them were in this studio. They don't tell me that we need cheaper imports. They tell me we need to support the British farming industry. And they tell me today doesn't do that. But look, we have to leave it there. Sarah Elliott, thank you very, very much for joining us on the show tonight. Well, let's continue this conversation now. So I'm delighted to join in the studio by the international journalist Hadley Gamble. Hadley, welcome to the studio. You were listening in there, nodding along. I've got to say, I've been through the detail, poring over the detail. Definitely a great deal for the United States. I'm not seeing this such a great deal for the United Kingdom.
And hey, listen, with all due respect to Ms. Elliott, I mean, that just sounded crackers to me. It is an incredible deal for the United States. This is a week of big wins for the U.S. president. Obviously, he's got this win on the trade deal. He's got a big win in the American Pope, the new Pope, Pope Leo. But also, just look at the optics of this. If this had been a big deal, a great deal for the United Kingdom, Keir Starmer would have been in the Oval Office, taking his victory lap. And he wasn't. He was here in the UK. He was at Jaguar Land Rover. You saw the faces of the folks standing behind him. They didn't look terribly enthusiastic about this. Yes, and why was it a funeral? Because this is a company where essentially it's 6% margin, right? And we're talking about a 10% tariff. So that essentially wipes out their profit margin. And also, they've said 100,000 cars. And as you and I both have discussed, they sold last year 101,000 cars in the United States. So that's basically saying that this is a company that can no longer grow in America. And
Kemi Badenoch has spoken out on this. She said that the UK has been shafted by this deal. Now, she might well say that because she's the leader of the opposition. But time and again, when you look at the detail, things like ethanol can now come into the UK at a greatly cheaper rate, tariffs 0% on that. We're being taught the ephemeral benefit of being afforded the security blanket of the US. What does that mean? How does this help British workers? We're told it safeguards British jobs, but the fact of the matter remains this. Very, very simple, Hadley. This is the worst position for the United Kingdom than it was before the tariffs came in.
Well, essentially, you had very little choice. To to be kind and clear about Keir Starmer here, he had a bad choice or no choice at all, right? Because you either went with this or you didn't get a deal at all. So I'm assuming that that was his thought process here. But that doesn't escape the fact, this is a country that's in industrial decline at 2 times the rate of the United States. This is a country now facing this wealth exodus of billions of dollars is the cost to your economy. So he's trying to do something that is clear. But what he has done has essentially not been good for this country. And when you look at just the very basics of it, I mean, the only people that really did well out of this, Rolls-Royce, perhaps, because these are
0%.
Rolls-Royce engines in Boeing planes, which are now going to be getting at a decent price. But the questions about, this is perhaps the worst made aircraft in recent history. So do you really want a Boeing aircraft? You take a step back and look at the details. As they say, the devil is always in the details.
And having the point of that, a Boeing aircraft needs a Rolls-Royce engine. So
Correct.
It's a component that will benefit American airline sales.
Yeah.
So Rolls-Royce is bolted on. Rolls-Royce, hats off to them. They've done well. Brexit, quickly mention Brexit. We undoubtedly were at the front of the queue today because of Brexit. After Barack Obama told us we'd be at the back of the queue if we voted Brexit. That didn't quite work out for him. Sir Keir Starmer, however, was the architect to try and bring down Brexit. We were the first in line. The rest of the world will be watching. What do you think the rest of the world, particularly the European Union, will look at this today and think, wow, if Britain, the special relationship, our greatest ally, got this treatment, let's be assuming the brace position.
No doubt about it. And, just a couple of weeks ago, I was at the IMF in Washington. I had the chance to sit down with the French finance minister, and he said that his country had not even had a detailed conversation yet about what could possibly be in their trade negotiation, their deal. So at the same point, you got to take a step back and think about this within the context of history. This is VE week. This is VE day. The U.S. president claiming a major victory. Well, you'll remember what happened after World War II to the United States and to Great Britain. Britain wasn't so great after World War II, and it was the American century, the 20th century. So you got to question how a prime minister of the United Kingdom could look people in the face and say, this is a great deal. That, to me, is crackers.
Hadley Gamble, I think you're right. I think today was a Victory in Europe Day for the United States. Hadley Gamble, always a pleasure. Please come back. Excellent guest. Superb. Thank you.